I got all this stuff to do.
Okay, greetings, cohort 6. Glad to be with you today. We're going to have a session on StrengthFinders, but before we launch into that, I wanted to start off with a quote. I wish you water. This is a quote from a book that I'm reading. The book is called Blue Mind, and I'm going to read you the tagline because I kind of get a kick out of this. The surprising science that shows how being near, in, on, or underwater can make you happier, healthier, more connected, and better at what you do. It's a big claim, but I think we all know or have an idea of what, or a feeling, I should say, of what being in the water is really like. So I'm going to start off with a water picture, and you will see that this is one of my trademarks. Every presentation that I make to you this year will have a water picture in it, and the reason I do this essentially is because I love the water, and I also think that it brings a sense of peace and calm. So this happens to be the picture of the view from my backyard. I'm lucky enough to get a house in Gloucester this April. I want you just to take, 10, 15 seconds to just look at the picture and let your eyes rest on the water. And in doing so, let your mind begin to relax. I know that you've all been very, very busy, and I'm sure you're forgetting to breathe, much less relax. So just take a second and let the blue mind happen for you. Okay, so there will be more to come. Let's launch right into the session on StrengthFinders. So the objectives for this session are two. One is to provide context for the actual strength finding measure and how best to understand the results. And the second objective is to begin the process of planning how to best use your results for your team introductions in class, which will happen on the 16th. Okay, I want to just say the asterisk you'll notice has one of multiple lenses. So when you make your introductions in our next class, I'm going to be asking you to be thinking about several lenses through which you see yourself in order to introduce yourself to your teammates. So this is going to be one. I'm also going to ask you to think about issues around race, identity, ethnicity, things that are really critical for your identity that you want your teammates to know about. But StrengthFinders will be one of the possible ways that you can introduce yourself. So a little bit of context, right? So StrengthFinders was actually developed through Gallup, and 40 years of researching human strengths kind of resulted in them having identified 34 common strengths. Donald Clifton, you may or may not know him, he's an American psychologist. He was considered to be the father of strengths psychology and also the grandfather of positive psychology. So I wanted to read you the mission statement because I think this says it all in some ways. So the mission statement is to begin a global conversation about what's right with people. So you can see embedded in that statement is a feeling, a sense that what has been happening is that there's been an over-focus on deficiencies and weaknesses. And so it was their effort to really say, let's look at what is happening that is positive and right about people's psychology and behavior. So let me just tell you a little bit about what the StrengthFinder is and what it isn't. So it's a tool. It can help guide development. It can identify how you are wired and view different situations. It can identify where you find your energy and what exhausts you. And it also can be used to maximize productivity. Now here's what is not. It's not a tool for hiring, promotion, or advancement. It identifies right versus wrong or good versus bad talents. It's not a tool to do that. It's not a tool for labeling people. And it's not a complete explanation of who you are and why you do what you do. And finally, it's not an excuse to not do something because it's not my strength. You'll notice that some of these phrases are bolded, and I kind of went through with the lens of the Myers-Briggs to see, in fact, where the overlap was. And it turns out that all of the things that are bolded are exactly the same things that you might say about the Myers-Briggs. Okay, so it's a non-judgmental measure. There's no right or wrong about it. It does not explain all of human psychology and human behavior, and it's inherent. So this is more like a trait of things that are hardwired. Okay, just a couple of assumptions that I wanted to tune you into about StrengthFinders. So one assumption, all people have strengths, but they aren't always recognized and they aren't always used. Strengths foster motivation for growth, and strengths are inborn, as I had said, and environmental. So what's meant by that statement is that it purports to tap into traits, but you can develop a talent and it can become a strength by what you do in the environment. So there's some flexibility around that. I'll get into that in a bit. So I'm going to mention this in their mission statement. StrengthFinders believes that you can close the gaps on your weaknesses and you can prevent failure, but you're never going to achieve excellence. Excellence comes from developing your talents. So this is not a remediation-based approach for sure. Okay, here's a definition from Gallup about what a strength is. So consistently producing a positive outcome through near perfect performance of a specific task. That is how they think of what a strength is. Strengths, however, are composed of three different things. So the first are skills, and that's the ability to perform fundamental steps of a task. And you acquire that through training and through practice. The second is knowledge. It's kind of your storehouse of information, if you will, acquired through your education primarily, and experiences, I would add. And then third are talents, the ways you innately think, feel, and behave. These are your gifts. So here's an important point I want to make. So talents are not necessarily strengths, okay? StrengthFinders folks believe that talents come naturally. So they're what you're kind of born with. But strengths are earned, okay? So in order to build strengths, you have to first discover what your talents are, and that your greatest talents are really going to be the foundation for your strengths. Here's an important takeaway, all right? You're going to get a report on your StrengthFinders, and your report actually identifies your talents. They may or may not be strengths, depending on how much you have actually had opportunities to develop them. So in a sense, StrengthFinders, it's kind of a misnomer. It should be called strength talents or talents, if you will. Again, they may be strengths, they might not be. So here's a question for preparation for our next class. I want you to think through your talents, okay? Think through what is listed as your top 5 talents, and ask yourself, of those top 5 talents, which are your strengths? Which ones have you had opportunities to really develop and practice and realize fully? And have you had ample opportunities? Some people have had more than others. So this is a little bit of a reflection and a preparation for you, coming to introduce yourself to your teammates in our next class. So as I said, your StrengthFinders reports will give you the top 5 strengths or talents out of a possible 34. So there are 34 in total. Unfortunately, the 34 talent/strengths report is very expensive, so we couldn't quite foot the bill on that one. But we did provide you with a report on what your top 5 strengths are, okay? Which is really what is probably most important for you to know at this point. All right, so let me say a little bit about this. So there are 34 strengths, and they have been collapsed into 4 domains. And having them exist into 4 domains is actually very helpful because it allows you to, couple of things. One is to look at where you are in particular across these 4 big areas. So they are executing, influencing, relationship building, and strategic thinking. It also allows you as a team member to be able to, and as a team I should say, to be able to look at your collective strengths from a domain point of view and be able to look at your team profile and maybe say, okay, hey, we're really great in relationship building and influencing, pretty good. Execution, not as good as we might wish, or we might be a little less strong there, and strategic thinking, maybe the least. And so then it allows you to have a conversation as a team about how to necessarily address that if you want to. Okay, so I'm going to go through each one. So the executors consist of these 9 strengths or talents. The executors are the people who you turn to implement a solution. These are the people who work, tirelessly to get something done. They'll take an idea and they'll transform it into a plan, into a reality. So I'm sure you can be, you have met many people like this. These are the people who get stuff done. The influencers. So again, I think there are 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 here. These are the people who sell the team's ideas inside and outside of an organization. So very important if you're a new team, for example, in an organization, and people, and especially if there's, say, been a reorganization, for example, people don't have any idea of who you are. So part of branding is to have a communication plan about who you are, so people know you, so people know how to use you. And so the influencers would have the innate skills and abilities to do that. So these are the people who take charge, they speak up and make sure that your group is heard. Then we have the relationship builders. Again, they're 9. These are the people who really provide the glue to hold the team together. So they're very focused on how the relationships in the team dynamics are going. They keep the energy high. They're forward-looking, right? So they're thinking about how to transform a group of individuals really into a team to carry out complex projects. So it's a more forward-looking, if you will, set of talents. And then finally, the strategic thinkers. And these are the people who, they keep the team and team members focused on what they could do. So they pull the team into the future. And in addition to that, and this is the more traditional definition, I think, is that they continually absorb and analyze information. They help the team to make better decisions. So those are the 4 domains. Implications for teams, right? So StrengthFinder's values diversity, and I'll say also that is true of the Myers-Briggs. So a diverse set of strengths has been shown to be advantageous for solving problems, making decisions, and innovating. So when you come into class next week, as you're introducing yourself to each other, I want you as a team to begin to chart the talents and strengths that are in your team and collapse them also into the domains, and then be able to do a step back and take a look. It doesn't have to happen next session, but over the time of your team. Look at where you're most strong and look at where you're least strong and how you would like to address that. Now, parenthetically, I'm just going to say this, that StrengthFinders it's a pretty radical approach. They do not really believe, as I said, in remediation. They don't necessarily believe in development per se. In other words, they wouldn't put their energy into focusing on getting someone stronger in an area of weakness. I'm sure we could have a great discussion about this. It's not exactly where I stand, but I think that I want you to know sort of what their approach has been. I will also say, having worked with many people in corporations and organizations over the last 20 years that when I do strength finders with teams, that everyone will peak at their bottom 5. So